Today, we're diving into a powerful costing method that can reveal a really surprising truth about a business's profits. We're going to see how some of the most popular products out there might secretly be the least profitable. Let's jump in.
So let me just start with this question. What if that one product you think is your absolute star performer, the one with the premium price tag, is actually a financial black hole? It's a way more common problem than you'd think, and the reason is kind of simple. It all comes down to how we measure cost.
To really understand the problem, we first have to look at the old way of doing things. For, decades, most businesses have used a pretty simple, straightforward method to figure out what their products actually cost to make.
It's called absorption costing. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like going out to dinner with a big group of friends. One person orders a simple salad, right? And someone else orders the expensive lobster. But at the end of the night, you just split the bill evenly. That's pretty much absorption costing. All the big indirect costs like factory rent, supervisor salaries, the whole shebang, they just get lumped together and spread out evenly.
So let's make this real with a quick case study. Imagine a company that makes two products, a high-volume, ordinary product, and a more low-volume, kind of premium deluxe version. Now, the direct costs, the materials, and the labor are easy enough to figure out. The deluxe one naturally uses a little bit more of each.
Okay, so the company has $224,000 in these big overhead costs. Using the simple method, what do? They just divide that total cost by the total hours everyone works. And poof, they get a single, one-size-fits-all rate of $2 per hour. And that gets applied to every single product, no matter how different they are.
So when we add that overhead in, the ordinary product comes out to a cost of $85, and the deluxe costs $102. Looks pretty straightforward, right? So the company prices the deluxe product higher, and they figure they're making a pretty healthy profit. But what if this whole picture is completely, and I mean completely wrong?
So let's move on and see how this seemingly logical method can actually lead to some really bad decisions. You see, this simple approach has a huge flaw, especially in the world we live in today.
Now, what's so interesting here is the contrast. This old method was designed for a totally different world, a world of simple factories with these long, identical production runs where labor was by far the biggest cost. But modern factories, they are complex. We're talking tons of automation, a huge diversity of products, lots of customization. So just spreading costs based only on labor hours, it just doesn't capture what's really going on anymore. And this right here brings us to the central mystery. Sure, the deluxe product only uses 1 extra hour of labor, but what if its low volume and its complexity are secretly just gobbling up a massive share of other factory resources like machine setups or material handling? The simple method is completely blind to this.
So how in the world do we find the truth? Well, we need a better detective, and that detective is called activity-based costing, or you'll hear it called ABC. This is where things get really cool.
ABC works on a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. Activities are what cause costs. So instead of one giant pot of overhead, ABC breaks that pot down into the specific activities that are actually driving those costs. It's like finally getting an itemized receipt for that dinner instead of just splitting the bill. Now you see exactly what you paid for.
And the whole process is basically a 4-step investigation. First, you group your overhead costs by activity and you create what are called cost pools. Second, you find the cost driver, the real cause, for each of those activities. Third, you calculate a specific rate for each driver. And finally, you assign those costs to the products based on how much they actually use each activity.
Okay, let's apply this to our example. We take that big $224,000 overhead pot, and after doing a little digging, we split it into 3 separate activity pools. And we see that a huge chunk of our costs are related to setting up machines for production batches, and another big piece is just for handling all the materials.
Now for those cost drivers. For batch setups, the math reveals something absolutely crucial. Every single time a machine has to be reconfigured for a new production run, it costs the company $3,000. That is our first major clue.
All right, next up is material handling. Here, the cost is much smaller, just 20 cents for every little component that's moved and stored. So now we have specific, real costs for our key activities. Now we can finally solve the case. So, we've gathered our clues, we've done the detective work, and now it is time for the big reveal. Let's see what happens when we apply these new, way more accurate rates to our 2 products. And there it is. The ordinary product, which we thought cost $85, actually costs less, only about $82. But look at the deluxe product. Oh my. Its true cost isn't $102. It's over $128. The simple method was overcosting their high-volume product and massively, massively undercosting their low-volume one. This is huge.
And here's exactly why. You remember that hidden cost of machine setups? Well, look at that. It accounts for nearly a quarter of the deluxe product's entire cost. This was completely invisible under the old method, which just smeared that cost evenly across everything.
So the culprit wasn't really the product itself, but the process. That expensive $3,000 setup cost is the same whether you make 100 units or 2,000. For the deluxe product, that cost gets spread over just 100 little units, adding a whopping $30 to each one. For the ordinary product, it's spread over 2,000 units, so it only adds about $1.50 each. That's the secret that ABC uncovered.
So why does all this matter? I mean, this isn't just an accounting exercise. Knowing the true cost is the first, most critical step toward taking smart, decisive action to really improve your business.
ABC basically gives you a true map of your costs. It shines a giant spotlight on your most expensive activities. So now, management knows that setups for the deluxe product are a major cost center. And now they can ask the right questions. Can we increase the batch size? Can we make that setup process way more efficient? This is what leads to better pricing, a smarter product mix, and real, tangible improvements.
And that leaves us with one final thought. You know, this way of thinking doesn't just apply to factories. Every business, every project, even our own personal productivity has these hidden activities that drive cost and effort. So the question I'll leave you with is this: what are the hidden drivers of cost in your world, and what might you discover if you actually started looking for them?